The jobs report shows almost double the expected jobs were added to the economy for the month of June, which leads many people to be afraid that the Fed is going to tighten monetary policy even more. And why would they do that? We'll be talking all things economy on the first half of the show today, because now that we're through the first half of our year, in the lead up to an election year, I think that's very important that we sit down and discuss how this is going to play out in our next election. But that's not all the news that we have today. In other news, Meta's Threads becomes the most rapidly downloaded app, as Twitter starts to come back out and say, no, you can't do that. And we'll talk about this, what the Threads app is supposed to do, what it's probably going to do, and what this means for the future of social media. Ron DeSantis releases a list of states whose issuance of IDs to illegal immigrants means that these people who are illegal immigrants in the country cannot drive in the state of Florida. So we'll talk about that, what that means, and where we go from there. And a judge puts a limit on Biden's admin's contact with social media firms, as the people who are opposed to this come back and say this could lead to election interference. It is going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Has anybody ever actually seen a copy of Final Fantasy VIII? That last bop that we were doing while the title card was up, that was supposedly from Final Fantasy VIII, but I don't know that I've ever seen a copy of that, ever in my life. Now, like I said, I look and I've got a copy of No, I don't have a copy of 7. I take that back. I have sought a copy of 7, but I don't have a copy of 7. I have a copy of 9. And all of its randomness, and of course a copy of 10, because I was a basic bitch in the early 2000s and decided that's the game that I needed to really stretch my wings out for the PlayStation Network for. But every time I think about that, I'm like, oh, 7, that's the one that everybody likes so much, and 9, that's the one that everybody pretends not to like, but they still kind of like in secret. But I don't know that I've ever heard anything about Final Fantasy VIII or have ever seen an actual live copy of Final Fantasy VIII. I don't know. I wouldn't even begin to know what the premise is, and that's funny too, because I'm not really even that much of a Final Fantasy guy. I like The Legend of Dragoon, which I think we're actually going to do a playthrough on over this winter here. I do want to spend some more time on the weekends out in the summer, out actually doing stuff, because, I didn't do so much of it when I lived in Redacted, back where I used to live. But I'm telling you right off the bat, there are a bunch of games that I want to get through. Chrono Cross and Chrono Trigger are actually on my list of stuff to do over the winter as well. So that's some future news, but there is no plans in the chat. So instead, we're going to get down into the news, and we've got plenty of that to go over today, especially with the economy. Now, I didn't come out initially when I started looking at things and plan to do a full sweep of the economy and what's actually happening there, in spite of what the Biden admin is trying to tell you is what's happening here. But it's just, I went through the off hours Discord and I noticed that there were a lot of things about vehicles and housing and jobs and this, and then we got this massive jobs report today on top of everything else, which makes people think that the economy is great, but it's not. Like, legitimately, people are still struggling here, and some of them, yeah, are coming out and getting some of these second jobs. So, but that's a spoiler alert. We're going to talk about that as the top segment. It's going to be an extended finance segment today, so we'll do our Dow, we'll do our layoff support, and then we'll go back and look through all the other aspects of the economy, and we've got a bunch more. Plus, I've got things I like and things that I hate tonight, and I think I've got some pretty good ones for things that I like, and a really, really, really egregious one out of my home state for things that I hate. Evers really overstepped the bounds at this point. He jumped the shark this time. But we'll be talking about that at the bottom of the show here on Contemporary. And before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine. Also go check out Overruled with KTZed, which will have yours truly on an episode upcoming. I think I've convinced her that we're going to do Watergate. I've got to get some of the last little things set up for that, but I think that's what we're going to do, because I do political analysis and she does true crime, and what's a truer crime in the political world than Watergate? Well, maybe Whitewater, but, you know, we can sit back and rehash that forever, but we'll check that out as well, and go check out all that other great programming as we bring you a better news and culture experience, not just news, but also your culture, from people who are just like you. That's right, stop getting your news and your culture from people who wear suits that cost more than your houses, and people that hate you. Get your news and culture from people who are just like you. Remember, you can check us out on YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, and Kick, all live. You can check us out on the replay on YouTube and Rumble and Odyssey, as well as on the audio platform on Spotify, so go check out all of that. If you can't catch us live, you can catch us back on demand. And let's get down into what we have going on for the day. Let's get started with the Dow. Let's get the live chat up. Live chat is welcome. By the way, if I don't get your live chat right away, I will, for the most part, address it, unless, of course, it is egregiously racist or bigoted, and at that point it definitely will get read on the air, maybe in a little bit of a shielded fashion for YouTube, but it will add to the intellectual level of this show. Alright, let's get into it. Let's get started. Oh look, Goats and Scarves is back. I haven't seen Goats and Scarves in forever. Thank you. Let's just have a quick look at the live chat here while we're getting everything started here. Mogwai, double the minimum wage jobs, and it's okay. Most Florida residents aren't able to drive in any state, to be honest. Yeah, that's true. Goats and Scarves is back. How about a copy of Final Fantasy Tactics? I have that. I do have that one. Mogwai says Goats and Scarves. J. Edgar is better without ads. Well, if you do watch an ad over on Twitch, I do thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. It throws 5 cents in my pocket every time you do, so. And they found the emotes too. Alright. Are you gonna come out again? Cheese? F for Ken Star. Okay, anyway, let's get into it. Starting with the Dow. The Dow is at 33,922.26. After today's strong jobs report, the Dow sank off almost immediately and stayed down throughout the day because the investors are waiting for the Fed to hike the rate hikes up even more. Some of them are even talking about a 50-point hike this time through, so we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. We'll be talking more extensively about this a bit later on in the show. Your Bitcoin was a little bit of a mixed bag today. It started off steady. It took a big rise in the early morning trading before sinking back down and trying to claw its way back up to settle at a modest drop of $286 and 10 US cents to $30,213 and 10 US cents. That is down just shy of 1% on the day today, with wild swings in both directions. Your gas prices in Madison are holding steady with a 320 outlier, and 324 is the average on the east side of Madison, and 330 remaining as your average on the west side. Remember, these prices do not reflect your local prices. Check your local listings to see what your local prices are. This is an average running from one market to see what and where these go and how they relate to the rest of the country. And it does look like everything is holding steady at this point. Let's grab our finance report today from CNBC. Dow closes more than 300 points lower as hot jobs data raises fears of Fed rate hikes from Alex Herring and Samantha Subin. Stocks slid on Thursday after better-than-expected jobs data increased investors' anxiety around the state of the economy and the path of interest rates. The Dow dropped 366.38 points, or 1.07%, to close at 33,922.26. The S&P lost 0.75% to end at 44,1159. The Nasdaq dropped 0.82% to 13,679.04. Thursday's session marked the worst daily performance for the Dow and the S&P since May. The three major indices are on pace to finish the week lower, with just Friday's session left in the holiday-shortened trading week. The Dow is poised for a slide of 1.4% on the week. The S&P and the Nasdaq, meanwhile, are on pace for weekly losses of 0.9 and 0.8% respectively. Private sector jobs increased by 497,000 in June. According to data from payroll processing firm ADP, the biggest monthly gain since July of 2022. June's increase was more than double the Dow Jones consensus estimate of 220,000 and far better than the downwardly revised 267,000 job additions seen in May. The 2-year U.S. Treasury yield hit a 16-year high on Thursday's session. The ADP data, which is often unreliable, is considered more volatile than other employment data, in spite of the fact that they continue to use it, by the way. It's reliable when it does what they want it to do, but like when you're seeing something like this, which is, it's gonna tank the economy, it's gonna go and make the Fed raise the interest rates again, then it's completely unreliable and you shouldn't even listen to it, so why would you even think about this? And considered more volatile than other employment data comes ahead of Friday's official June payrolls report. Economists are expecting 240,000 non-farm payrolls were added last month, a slowing from the 339,000 jobs added in May, according to Dow Jones. However, traders may now be expecting a hotter number that leads to the Fed resuming its hiking campaign this month after a pause at the June meeting. Traders are pricing in an approximately 92% chance of a hike at the central bank's meeting later this month, according to CME Group's FedWatch tool. The market clearly would have preferred an inline number, said John Lynch, Chief Investment Officer at Comerica Wealth Management. But because it was more than double expectation, it really ratchets up the fear factor that the Fed would have to be more aggressive. Let's talk about what these jobs numbers mean, because number one, this is not moving the needle anywhere. There are a couple things to look at with the fact that the jobs data is out there. There are places, several places at this point, that still have the help wanted sign out. I know my current job is down, what do they say? And this is a small shop, but in total they're down 6 jobs still. And they've been on a hiring spree. They've brought on at least 5 new people since I started working there, including replacing one who, well, we're not going to get into it, but had to be let go very shortly after I started working there. So putting 8 people on and still needing 6 more to be fully staffed at this point, and wondering where they're going to find these 6 other people. And there are bigger places out there that are wondering even more where they're going to go out and find these people. A lot of these jobs are still open with the business that's coming in for them. Plus, of course, there's always trucking and the convenience store aspect of it. But the big question there is, what are the jobs that they're getting? And who's going to work? Our unemployment rate is ticking up. Even with 500,000 jobs being added in a month, our unemployment rate is ticking up. Some things to keep in mind in June, and that is at the beginning of June, by the beginning of June, the kids are all out of school. Some of them are starting to get into the workforce and get that summer job at, give or say, the second week of May or so. But once that big rush comes in when everybody else is out of school, that's coming in at the beginning of June. In fact, I've seen some graduations that haven't even come. Graduations and schools out for the summers that don't come until the first week of June. So you have that level of people who are entering the workforce, number one, first and foremost, people who otherwise wouldn't be working. And they're not working a 50,000 $60,000, $100,000 a year job. They're making whatever the minimum wage is in their state, probably getting tips at some point or other off of this, running a cash register, making some coffee, or working at a campground somewhere. They're doing the summer jobs. That's going to be a big driver of this number. And we talked about this last year at this exact same time, when the Biden admin again was coming out and touting how successful he was in creating jobs. And then we had months after that, July, August, September, and especially, down getting into August, September, when the kids were going back to school, where we were having 5-figure job creation months while they were expecting another 200,000 to go with that. So there is that aspect of it. But the other aspect of this is second jobs. While there are still people out there who refuse to go back out and work because they're doing better off welfare, or on the other avenue of things, people whose unemployment is starting to run out, and now they're thinking, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to make the rent? How am I going to make any sort of payment off of this, that are now looking and grabbing whatever job it is that they A, can do, and B, can get a hold of. And a lot of these low skill jobs, number one, are being picked up by kids who can work for a lot less and expect a lot less, but are being filled by the people who were in the first rounds of layoffs too. So there are a lot of things that go into this number, and it's not just Biden admin is creating jobs. Number one, the government doesn't create jobs. They create either barriers or incentives for private sector people to make jobs. And number two, we're just getting to the point, like 2 months ago, where all the pre-pandemic lost jobs are now opened back up and staffing some of their old staff. We're just cresting that point now. So that is what we have coming out of our markets report. Let's get the live chat back up here. And let's keep going. Our layoffs report today comes from Axios. 2 days in a row where we don't actually have a big round of layoffs. So hopefully that means that this is stopping, at least for now. But a report today from Axios, because we can't have a report from Axios that doesn't have the gender pay gap in it. Well, this is the gender layoff gap. Women were disproportionately affected by the tech layoffs, from Emily Peck. The tech industry skews male, but tech layoffs can paint a different picture. A disproportionate percentage of the workforce laid off since last fall appear to be women. There are fears that the big tech layoffs that rocked the industry may have set back its years-long push to diversify. From October 2022 to June 2023, women made up 45% of laid-off tech employees, according to an analysis of look at this analysis, man! An analysis of 3,404 workers by layoffs.fyi shared with Axios. Now, mind you, 3,404 workers doesn't even scratch the surface of the number of people that were laid off, so I'm a little bit suspect of these numbers. About 55% of the laid off workers were male, the analysis shows, but the industry statistics put the share of male employees in tech at a much higher level, said Roger Lee, the founder of layoffs.fyi. At Meta in 2022, 63% of the employees were male, according to the company's data. Meta said it does not disclose demographic data around layoffs. Layoffs.fyi, which tracks industry downsizing, ran the full names of laid off U.S. tech employees taken from opt-in lists through a gender name analyzer. The analyzer isn't perfect, and the opt-ins list may have a bit of a selection bias. Tech layoffs were less techy than you might realize, hitting the hardest parts of these companies that are typically more female-dominated, like human resources, recruiting, and marketing. That is actually a fair assessment of the situation. Their engineers and the people who are out there making their monies were typically safer in their positions than the support staff. We saw that time and time again when we were analyzing layoffs. Almost half of HR people and recruiters were laid off in tech, compared to 10% of engineers and 4% of salespeople, found a separate analysis of layoffs.fyi data. These are the teams, and they're usually smaller, that are typically first to get cut in a round of layoffs since they're viewed as less essential. Meanwhile, the tech companies have also pared back their diversity, equity, and inclusion staff. So, the woke stuff as well. But that is what we have for our layoff support, and we are going to stay in economy mode for at least a little while and talk about what is actually happening in our country versus what Biden is trying to tell us. Doing a little bit more analysis of the 497,000 jobs from CNBC. Again, private sector companies added 497,000 jobs in June, more than double expectations, ADP says, from Jeff Cox. The labor market showed no signs of letting up in June as companies created far more jobs than expected, payroll processing firm ADP reported on Thursday. Now, and again, ADP doesn't do an analysis or release an analysis of statistics and salary increase, or anything like that. They literally just take the raw number of jobs that people created. They don't take into account for second jobs. They don't take into account for people coming back from a layoff. They don't take into account people who switched jobs, who left a job behind that still needs to be filled. It is just the raw number of new payroll accounts that are formed in the country, as discovered by ADP. Well ahead of the downwardly revised 267,000 gain in May, and better than the 220,000 Dow Jones consensus estimate. The increase resulted in the biggest monthly rise since July of 2022. Oddly enough, right around the same time of year. It's funny how that works. The Mogwai says different parts of the country are experiencing different things. I know around me is growing like gangbusters, where areas of the north are sucking. Yeah, actually, where I live too, we're having a big surge in both trying to get people into the community from other parts of the state and other parts of the country as well. And we are having a big job push here because I live close to La Crosse, Wisconsin, which is the home of Quick Trip, which is expanding at a breakneck pace. And as they expand and build more stores and start to reach out further into Minnesota and into Illinois now, that's new for them, and with their Quick Start franchise in Iowa as well. And even some talks now into invading the UP up in Michigan, on top of everything else. The more stores they have, the more employees that they have, and the more support staff that they need, the more IT they need, the more cooks, the more... I mean, Quick Trip it's an industry in and of itself. It's like halfway between a convenience store and a grocery store, with some fast casual a la carte dining on top of it. It's really an impressive business model. I know those of you down in the south cite Wawa. I have seen a Wawa, but I've never been in a Wawa. But from what I've heard from people who live in the south, and including a friend who, I don't know if he still works at the Wawa, but I know that he used to. It's a similar concept. Some might even say exactly identical. And unfortunately, I think that the housing market's never going to crash around here just because of the fact that they're pulling people from other parts of the state. And it's going to crash in other parts of the state before it hits here. Let's see. From a sector standpoint, leisure and hospitality led with 232,000 new hires. That's your high school students getting out of high school and going into get their summer jobs. Leisure and hospitality, the campground, the restaurant, the diner, etc. Followed by construction with 97,000 jobs, which is probably a lot of people coming back from layoff, from the over the winter layoff, and trade and transportation utilities at 90,000. Annual pay rose at a 6.4% rate, representing a continued slowing that nonetheless is still indicative of brewing inflationary pressures. So it's above the inflation rate year over year at this point. but we're still catching up from the fact that it was well below the inflation point last year. I would say that on a 2-year basis, we're actually still losing in wages. Most of us, at least. Consumer-facing service industries had a strong June, aligning to push job creation higher than expected, said Nella Richardson, chief economist at ADP, but wage growth continues to ebb in these industries, and hiring likely is cresting after a late cycle surge. The unexpected jump in payrolls comes despite more than a year's worth of Federal Reserve interest rate increases aimed at in large part to cool a jobs market, in which there were still nearly 2 open positions for every available worker. Excuse me. ADP's count comes a day ahead of the more closely watched non-farms from the Department of Labor that's expected to show an increase of 240,000 after a 339,000 gain in May. While the two reports can differ broadly, ADP numbers pose some upside risk for Friday's report. So that is where we are at in our jobs market, and the paid shills are coming out here telling you already, this is great, we love Biden, look at all the jobs that he created. And that couldn't be further from the truth. August is going to be our big decision as to what the economy is actually doing. So we'll see what happens with that. Axios reporting ADP redesigned its jobs report and its moving markets, from Felix Salmon. Last August marked the arrival of a new monthly jobs report that had great potential. On Thursday, the potential was proved, as the ADP report sent a 10-year Treasury yield spiking above 4% while stocks ended the day down. The big question surrounding the ADP report has been whether traders would take it seriously as an independent data set. That question has now been decisively answered. Historically, the ADP report was aimed at traders rather than economists. It was a black box, designed to mimic the Bureau of Labor Statistics monthly jobs report as closely as possible, and which implicitly encouraged traders to try to front-run the BLS report. The new ADP report, designed with input from Stanford researchers, is meant to be a whole parallel data trove capable of moving markets and influencing policymakers on its own merits. Rather than being based on polling data like the BLS report, the ADP report is based on actual payroll transactions at companies employing more than 25 million U.S. workers. The latest Fed minutes explicitly mention the ADP as an important source of the employment data. So, that's going to push the markets. It's going to push the markets down. I would almost guess that it's premature. I'm not going to give official financial advice on this, but based on, again, the analysis that I've looked at for the 500,000 new jobs, quote unquote, I would almost be tempted to buy the dip on this particular instance. Because again, I don't think that these are all the big permanent jobs that the Fed is worried about. I think this is just the kids getting out of school. But that's what we see coming out of that. Here's the good news. Here's some of the bad news now. Bankruptcy filings surge in the first half of 2023 in the US, according to Epic. Coming to us from Reuters, no author given. US Chapter 11 bankruptcy filings jumped 68% in the first half of 23 from a year earlier. But don't worry, it's all fine, everything's fine. Epic Bankruptcy, a provider of U.S. bankruptcy filing data, said on Monday. SVB Financial, Envision Healthcare Corp., Bed Bath & Beyond, Party City, Holdco, Lordstown Motors, and Kitty Fenwal were among some casualties of decades-high interest rates and sticky inflation as the era of easy money drew to a close. The growth in filings is reflective of more families and businesses facing surging debt loads due to rising interest rates, inflation, and increased borrowing costs. American Bankruptcy Institute's executive director, Amy Quackenboss, said in a statement. The Federal Reserve has raised its key interest rate to a target range of 5 to 5.25 after 10 straight hikes, making borrowing more expensive for companies and individuals. The U.S. Bank Left central interest rates unchanged in June, but sees 2 more hikes by the end of 2023. Let's see. The next one is in July. Then they skip August, September, October, and December. And I would almost be remiss to say I would expect to see a rate hike at all 4 of those. Excuse me. Allergy season coming in. Luckily enough, I don't have the big runny nose like I would have in the morning when I was doing contemporary in the morning. Get up, go start working, and as soon as you start talking, it's like, ugh, all goes right away. But sneezing all day really, really takes its toll on the throat. A total of 2,973 commercial Chapter 11 bankruptcies were filed in the first 6 months of 2023, Epic said, compared to 1,766 in the same period last year, which is, by the way, 4,000, just about 766 jobs. I would say 4,000, probably a good 4,750 jobs, or businesses that all carry jobs gone across 2 years. Additionally, individual Chapter 13 filings also saw a 23% jump during the same time period. Everything's fine, don't worry. Strongest economy in history, just don't worry about those ones. Bankruptcy filings for small businesses categorized as Subchapter 5 elections within Chapter 11 jumped 55% according to the data. Again, taking a lot of jobs with them. But don't worry, everything's fine. This is fine. Everything's fine. Reminds me of the little dog with the fire all around it. This is fine. Everything is fine. What else do we have? From Fox Business, housing affordability plummets to lowest level since 2007 as prices jump. From Megan Henney, housing affordability in the U.S. declined again in the spring as home prices surged nationwide, according to new data from real estate analytics firm Adam. The findings show the price of a median single-family home surged to $350,000 in the second quarter, a 10% jump from the previous quarter, one of the biggest increases in the past decade. That price is also 2% above last year's peak, according to the report, before the spike in mortgage rates cooled demand among would-be home buyers. Oh yeah, if the mortgage rates were still low, I can't even begin to imagine where we would be at with this. The portion of average wages required to own a home, meanwhile, skyrocketed to 33% in the period from April to June. That marks the highest debt-to-income ratio since 2007, meaning the market is the least affordable for Americans in nearly 2 decades. The lack of affordability is widespread across the country, with prices rising in about 98% of counties when compared to historical averages. The U.S. housing market has done an about-face following a downturn that threatened to usher in an extended period of flat or falling prices. With that has come another blow to how much house the average worker around the country can afford. Adam CEO Bob Barker said in a statement, Rob Barber, not Barker. I think there is deep down a little part of me that wants to sit down and watch The Price is Right. Whether this is just a temporary blip amid this year's peak buying season or a sign of another extended price surge is anyone's guess. Well, the problem is that there's going to be an extended price surge because we still have external forces that are coming out and buying up these houses and turning them into rental properties, keeping them out of the hands, holding the market up, but also keeping them out of the hands of Joe or average worker. The Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hike campaign sent mortgage rates soaring above 7% for the first time in nearly 2 decades, and rates have been slow to retreat. Rates on the popular 30-year fixed are currently hovering around 6.71%, according to Freddie Mac, well above the 5.7% rate recorded a year ago and the pre-pandemic rate of 3.9%. So that house that you wanted to buy, that house that I wanted to buy, that might still be out of your reach at this point. What else do we have? Motor market. Least affordable motor market in history. Just 8% of new cars cost less than 30 grand. Which is interesting. So, and this kind of will give you an idea of what happened to prices just over an actual tangible stretch. In 2016, my ex-girlfriend smoked the engine in her Hyundai. She had a Sonata that she never changed the oil in. Basically until the no oil pressure light came on. Which is what happened with it. So at that point, we went out and decided that it was time. She decided that she needed to have a brand new car. I told her that she, especially if she's trying to pay down debt like she said that she was going to, she should have settled for a used one. A couple years old, just go back out and get that. Put that money that she would have spent on the new car into something else. And then get all the rest of that stuff paid off and then go buy the brand new car. But she had to have the brand new car. So we went over to the Ford dealer. And she bought a Fusion, 2016 Fusion, for $16,500, which is, by the way, exactly what I bought my 2011 F-150 for the following January, $16,500. If these numbers are correct, let me look. Let me just see. I don't even know if we can still get a Fusion. I was thinking about that the other day when I looked at Ford's website. I'm like, whatever happened to cars? Nope, they cut that line. Yep, Ford Fusion is retired. Let's use an Edge. We'll use an Edge as our baseline for this. Because it's similar-ish in size. And who is entering into it? Okay. 54650. I don't know where that is. I don't know where it is that they have me located in the address, but I don't live anywhere close to 54650. I'll look that up later. Your 2023 Ford Edge, starting at $37,945. And again, we bought a brand new car for $16,500 in 2016. So yes, we're sitting in an affordability crisis right now. Absolutely. Inflation under Biden has soared, driving up the cost of everything, but cars have gone right through the roof. Just 8% of new cars on the market cost less than 30 grand. That's down 38% from before the Pox pandemic began in 2020. Car makers are finding heavy demand for high-end SUVs and trucks, so they've trimmed down their selection on more affordable models, according to data from car shopping app Copilot, cited by CNBC. Dude, I would buy a Fusion, by the way, just so you know. If they made a new one, a 2023 one, I would buy one. That was actually, for what it was, that was a comfortable little car. I wonder what the Escape, I think the Escape might actually, no, the Fusion, or the Edge would be the closest one, I think. It's the least affordable car market in modern history, said Copilot CEO Pat Ryan. In 2017, the average cost of a new vehicle was around 35 grand. Today, it's nearly 50 grand, according to CNBC, and now 10% of all vehicles sold cost more than 70 grand. A 70% jump from 5 years ago. Low-end vehicles have also plummeted. Just 0.3% of new vehicles sold now costs less than 20 grand, compared to 8% 5 years ago, Edmunds found. I remember when the Aveo came out. This might be dating myself a little bit at this point. But the big push for the Chevrolet Aveo in 0203 was the fact that it was the only new car in the market that cost less than 10 grand. Coming in at a cool $99.95 in 02. And trust me, it was worth $99.95. I have a niece that had one. Those doors just sounded tinny. The high cost of new automobiles has pushed buyers to purchase older cars with more mileage, which means their cost of maintenance will rise. Not if you know what you're... Excuse my language, not if you know what the fuck you're doing. Those that have the least ability to pay are getting the car that's going to cost the most to own, Ryan said. I don't know, I've put a set of tires and a set of spark plugs in my 2014, and that's all that I have into the damn thing. And it gets 20 miles to the gallon with a V8. So, of course, the cost of buying a used car has also soared. A new Edmunds report found the prices on average for used cars are 44% higher than 5 years ago, but there's some relief. They dropped 6.4% in the first quarter of 2023, Fox News reported. That's because they've got new stuff on the lot. The good news is that used prices have softened enough in quarter one to offer some relief for consumers getting pushed out of the new market. Edmunds Director of Insight, Ivan Drury, told Fox the not so good news is that the used vehicle market continues to be challenging for car shoppers since there are fewer vehicles available and demand is keeping prices historically high. Right now the market's kind of like an EKG, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, so it's hard to sell right now with interest rates. Mike Stotler told the Daily Wire, Stotler, who lives in Virginia, has bought and sold used cars for a dealership for 35 years. The bread and butter price point right now is 12 grand to 20 grand, but they're hard to get. When I went and looked at my new truck, the brand new one that I had my eye on, at the dealer a little ways away from here, they told me they'd give me 12 for my 14 F-150, which is unfortunately about what I owed on it. So I wasn't coming out anywhere ahead. Interest rates are also hammering buyers of both new and used. The average annual percentage rate on new vehicles bought in the first quarter of 2023 jumped to 7%, compared to 4.4% a year before, according to Edmunds, the highest level since the first quarter of 2008. Used cars were worse. The average APR increased to 11.1% from 7.8% a year ago, Edmunds said. And that's why I'm not refinancing. I have better credit and I would still get a worse rate if I refinance right now. So there are a few things that go along with this as well. Now, what the Daily Wire is not telling you, because they are peddling fear porn against the Biden admin, make no mistake, that is what the Daily Wire is doing, by the way, and saying how much of an unaffordability crisis that we're in with this right now. One of the things to keep in mind is the fact that since people won't buy at the prices that they're out to, the prices are coming down on new vehicles. Used is still stubbornly high, and that's staying stubbornly high, with that little bit of relief in quarter one, as they talked about in the article here. But new is coming down. When I figured out about how much money that I was going to be making a month at my new job, all the way back in January, I went out and priced out a brand new F-150. Brand new. Mostly stripped down because I don't want all the fancy bells and whistles. But, working man's truck with comfort, much like what I have now. A 2014 Chrome Package XLT. So I looked at it, and at the time when I priced it out, give or take about the options level of what my current truck is, it came out to, for a half-ton, $69,347. When I mentioned the truck, excuse me, when I mentioned the truck that I went out and looked at over at the dealership a little ways up from here, they had a sticker on that of 57. And it actually had a couple of extra options up above and beyond what it was that I was looking at when I was seeing 69,000 for a half ton. I priced out a 3/4 ton that same time when I first came in. $89,000 for a 3/4 ton. By doing the build your own on Ford's website. Right now, built the same way, $69,000. So, there is some relief coming in those, and we also saw that. I pointed out with the tires that I put on. I just put on tires. Now, when I looked at tires, and this was at full retail price, but I was at Discount Tire last September, they quoted me $1,200 for just the standard size tire, what was on my truck. $1,200 for 4 8-ply tires back last September. Now keep in mind I get a small employee discount, but even still it wasn't really that much of a difference. I just put 4 on for $743. That would have retailed at $804 without the discount. When stuff sits on the shelf, the companies have to lower the price because even selling at either reduced profit or even a little bit of a loss if necessary means they're actually moving product. So that's where we are at with the economy and the finance. What else do we have here? From just the news, USDA says it overpaid 10% of food stamp benefits in 2022 as program doubled from 2019. A shocker. The government lost track of oversight and flooded the market with money. From Greg Piper. Largely due to unintentional mistakes by the government or households, the U.S. Department of Agriculture said it overpaid Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits in 10% of cases, the Washington Times reported. The government either wrongly determined households were eligible for the program, better known as food stamps, or overestimated how much they were due, while 2% were deemed underpayments. The total rate of under and overpayments was lower before the pinkopox pandemic, 7.4% in 2019 and 6.8% in 2018. States varied widely on how accurate their payments were, with Alaska the worst at overpayment with 57% and South Dakota the best at just under 3%. The program also doubled since 2019, reaching $113.9 billion from $55.6 billion, due large part to the extended benefits that we had from 2020 to 2022. It now covers 41 million Americans with an average payment of $230 per month. 41 million Americans on food stamps. And they're telling us we have the best economy in history. See, we got some stuff going on over here. I didn't even look. Mr. Scott says commercial bankruptcies. I need to make a meme gif of that. Everything is fine, morphing into the Elmo with fire. Nice. Mr. Scott says, when I went to jail for growing weed, I got Bob Barker flip-flops in county. Nice. They were crack quality. Huh. Bad idea, especially if it doesn't change her oil. No, she learned her lesson after that. And Ford is the last thing I would buy. I like Ford. Mind you, my ascent from GM to Ford came from an older F-150 with way more cam and more intake than it needed. And I wondered why it shredded transmission so quickly, but man, when the transmission was functioning in that, man, was that fun to drive. I smoked my cousin's, what did he have? 06? What the hell, what year was that? 05. His 05 GMC with a 95 F-150. And when he asked what was in it, I told him not to worry about it. I bought it like that too, by the way. Let's see. The Rogue clone, yep. Mr. Scott says, ports are nice if you never get your hands greasy. You'll need a $200 tool to do a $50 job. The F-Series trucks are okay, better than a Silverado. The Tundras are still going to last longer. I don't know, I was never sold on the Tundra. I've tried it, I've driven one before. I didn't care for it. If I could get any truck, I'd get a Tacoma. Can you still get that with a standard transmission? My next car will probably be 2 total Tacomas, and I'll use one as a donor for parts. Mogwai says, it's okay, I sold my foodstuffs for cocaine that I lost when I was touring the White House, and Goats and Scarf says, and then Rachel Levine found it. That's the event that inspired the movie Cocaine Bear. Oh, that's funny. Let's keep going on the economy. Gee, weird. A government program that expanded massively during the Pinkpox pandemic lost accountability? I'm shocked. Okay, I'm not that shocked. The last one that we're going to do on the economy. I know, like I said, we spent most of the first half of the show on this. But the last one on the economy for the day comes to us again from the Daily Wire. Ben Shapiro shreds Bidenomics as President touts economic record. From the Daily Wire. I think I listened to this episode the other day. Daily Wire editor emeritus Ben Shapiro shredded President Biden for his record on economics as the president tours the country promoting Bidenomics. Biden, who has overseen runaway inflation, is conducting a 3-week trip to tout his economic policies across the nation, pointing to the infrastructure bill we signed and the Inflation Production Act, which critics say only made inflation worse. Oh no, I haven't heard this one because I haven't heard today's yet. Okay, gang, we can all see what Bidenomics is. It looks like 40-year highs in inflation, it looks like stagnating wages, and it looks like a continued stagnation in the economy that's eventually going to lead to a recession here. Okay, gang, that's what it looks like. So, he's trying to tweet through this thing, Shapiro said on his Thursday podcast. The Daily Wire co-founder also ripped into Biden, who is running for re-election, over a Wednesday tweet, which the president said, every American willing to work should be able to get a job no matter where they are and keep their roots where they grew up. That's Bidenomics. That is bullshit. That is utter and complete bullshit. You should be eager to get out from where you were and explore and find a better job elsewhere. That's what our parents did. That's what our grandparents did. That's how my family wound up close to Kenosha for so long. I'm telling you right off the bat, the only reason that I am as close to home as I wound up being at this point is by pure chance. When I was looking, number one, I did everything I could to stay away from where I grew up. But number two, I live maybe an hour from where I grew up at this point, which I still consider to be a distance, but now I can go back and help all my parents when need be. But on the menu when I moved were Dubuque, Iowa, back to Kenosha. Thank God that didn't happen. Atlanta, Nashville, Arizona, Ohio. I had a list of places that were far, far, far away from where I wound up landing and where I grew up. It shouldn't be that you have to stay where you put your roots down where you grew up. It should be you go where the jobs are that you're most talented in. Chris, I hate to bring up my ex again, but the girl that I mentioned, the one that blew the engine in her Sonata, was over here all the way from New Hampshire. Because that's where the jobs were when she got out of school. No, I never lived in Ohio, but that's one of the places I was looking for jobs. Shapiro contrasted Bidenomics with Reaganomics, which was the idea that the economy could grow by lowering taxes to increase production and investment, which would in turn grow the economy. Well, gang, I can also say that stupid statements like that, every American willing to work hard should be able to make $7.3 million per year at the job of their choice in the beachside resort of their choice. That's Shapironomics, Shapiro said. You're saying random sentences right now. Every American should be able to work the job of their choice without an educational degree, even up to and including brain surgeon, in the city of their choice, in a penthouse apartment of at least 4,000 square feet. The Biden admin has frequently painted a rosy picture of the economy despite widespread inflation and a recession earlier. In Biden's term, prices for the many items remain high, with the National Retail Federation finding the average per person spending on 4th of July food items rose $93.34, the highest ever recorded by the NRF since the survey began in 2003. The new total marked a $9.22 increase since last year, when the individual cost averaged out to $84.12. So that is Shapiro on Bidenomics. I'll have to go back and listen to that now. Mr. Scott says, accuses people of dribbling and then proceeds to drivel. I don't know if that's me or Shapiro. I accuse people of dribbling and I drivel on constantly. And yet people come back and watch me. Alright. That's the economy. That's where we're at right now. From CNN Business, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about Threads. Have you guys tried this yet, by the way? Those of you who are on Instagram. We'll be talking about why this is suddenly so popular. And yes, I think it's astroturfed. And I say it's astroturfed, and I signed up for it. I'm on Threads, by the way. JEdgar102. Mogwai says, every time someone mentions Reaganomics, I picture the Ben Stein scenes from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which I have not seen. That is on the not seen list. Mr. Scott says, I was talking about Shapiro. Mogwai says, Biden is dribbling as we speak. Come on, man. Mr. Scott says, we're here for your dribble. I prefer to think of it as jape and jive. You know, if I really wanted to, I don't think they'd pay attention inside, but I could vape and jive. I smoke occasionally again. Should pick up the vape and stop doing that. Alright, let's talk about Threads. What is Threads? Here's what you need to know about the potential Twitter killer. From Claire Duffy. Facebook parent Meta on Wednesday officially launched its Twitter competitor, Threads, after first confirming its plans for the app just 3 months ago. Threads is already off to a strong start. We'll talk about that in a minute. The app received 30 million signups as of Thursday morning, according to the company, including a large number of brands, celebrities, journalists, and many other prominent accounts. The mood on Threads Wednesday night felt a bit like the first day of school, with early adopters rushing to try out the app and write their first posts. And a certain Mr. Ignoramus testing out the N-word filter. We know he did it. He was debating it on Instagram. We know he did it. And some questioning whether the app could end up being the Twitter killer. As of Thursday morning, Threads was the top free app on Apple's App Store and a top trending topic on Twitter. Threads could pose a serious threat to Twitter, so says an article written by a publication that hates Twitter, which has faced backlash since Elon Musk took over the platform in October 2022 and has run with a fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants approach. Yeah, this is basically Africa Man bad. But Twitter has become particularly vulnerable in recent days, angering users over a temporary limit on how much content users can view each day. And for Meta, Threads could further expand its empire of popular apps and provide a new platform on which to sell ads. Here's everything we know so far about Threads. What is Threads? Threads is a new app from the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. The platform looks a lot like Twitter, with a feed of largely text-based posts, although users can post photos and videos where people can have real-time conversations. Meta said messages posted to Threads will have a 500-character limit. Similar to Twitter, users can reply to, repost, and quote others. But the app also blends Instagram's existing aesthetic and navigation system and offers the ability to share posts from Threads directly to Instagram stories. Thread accounts can be listed as public or private. Verified Instagram accounts are automatically verified on Threads. The vision of Threads is to create an option and friendly public space for conversation, Mark Zuckerberg said in a Threads post following the launch. We hope to take what Instagram does best and create new experience around text, ideas, and discussing what's on your mind, and also your data, all your sweet data. Please give me all your data. Should sit down and watch Next Generation for a little while and see if, especially if we're going to start talking about Zuckerberg again, to get the data voice and inflection down pat. Because the Lieutenant Commander Data would fit the Zuckerberg personality way better than just generic robot voice. And I think I can do it. I think I can pull it off. The key part of doing the Commander Data impression is the facial expressions. Make a note of that. I'm going to do that. We're going to start a new rewatch of next... Oh, shoot. I'm already watching 2 programs. Fuck it. We're still going to do it. Brent Spiner, eat your heart out. Users sign up through their Instagram accounts and keep their same username, password, and account name, although they can edit their bio to be unique to Threads. Users can also import the list of accounts they follow directly from Instagram, making it super easy to get up and running on the app. We'll talk about that in just a minute as well. But it's not quite so easy to leave Threads. While users can temporarily deactivate their profiles via the settings section in the app, the company says its privacy policy will, in its privacy policy, that your Threads profile can only be deleted by deleting your Instagram account. Some users have also raised concerns about the amount of data that Threads like Instagram can collect about users, including location, contacts, search history, browsing history, contact info, and more, according to the Apple App Store. Everybody say goodbye to Fee. Fee's farewell is here. There's another bop, by the way. There's a lot of stuff on this particular playlist that is just a bop. Threads is available in 100 countries and in more than 30 languages via Apple's iOS and Android, according to the company. So that is what Threads is. I signed up for Threads. I put one thread up so far, and I literally said, generic first Threads post was my first thread on Threads. But see, and that's one of the things. They've brought up some of the strengths, and they're saying that it's the biggest app ever. It's got the biggest launch ever. In fact, even the New York Times, a former newspaper, saying the same thing. Threads becomes the most rapidly downloaded app, raising Twitter's ire. You have nothing to worry about. From Mike Isaac. 2 hours after pressing the launch button on Wednesday on Threads, Instagram's new app for real-time public conversations, Zuckerberg posted more than 2 million people had downloaded the latest creation. In another 2 hours, 5 million people had downloaded Threads by the time Zuckerberg, the chief executive of Meta, went to his recharging pod on Wednesday night. The number of downloads had soared to 10 million when he woke up on Thursday. When his charging cycle was complete on Thursday, the app had been downloaded more than 30 million times, he said. In less than a day, Threads, which is aimed to rival Twitter, appears to have taken the crown as the most rapidly downloaded app ever. It easily outstripped ChatGPT, the chatbot, which was downloaded 1 million times within its first 5 days, according to OpenAI, ChatGPT's maker. And it's on pace to exceed 100 million users within 2 months, a feat achieved only by ChatGPT, according to the analytics firm SimilarWeb. Some of the Twitter's most followed users, such as Ellen, Bill Gates, Shakira, and Oprah, immediately joined Threads and began posting. The atmosphere was celebratory, with users writing welcome messages and expressing eagerness to read one another's posts. At one point, the new app was so inundated with users that it appeared unstable. "This is as good of a start as we could have hoped for," Zuckerberg, whose company owns Instagram, Facebook Messenger, and WhatsApp, said in a post, while consuming data at an alarming and rapid pace. In a post on Threads on Thursday, he later added, "Feels like the beginning of something special." The early momentum underscored people's desire to find an alternative to Twitter, the 17-year-old digital town square that has long been the central place for public conversation online. Since Elon bought Twitter last year, the billionaire has instituted changes that have anchored more social platforms' longtime users, especially those who do not care for his laissez-faire approach to content moderation. Twitter has also suffered from more outages and bugs. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack with just these 2 articles. There is a buttload to unpack just by looking at these. And by the way, while I was talking about that, because we're running to Instagram on my phone right now, and I can see the alerts that are coming up, and I just saw 2 more people joined Threads and then accepted because I literally imported my following list from Instagram into Threads. And as people have been joining up, it just says, "Oh, well, this person accepted your follow request." I've looked at Threads a couple times. I open it up, I look at it, I see what's going on over there. And number one, it's pretty barren at this point. And it actually is a little bit easy to get a little bit of a leg up, even with no content. The ability to get a leg up on Threads it's there. I mean, you can go back out there, you can make the content, and people are coming back out and finding it, liking it, and following your threads. I don't know that this is going to be the Twitter killer, though, for one very important reason, and that's audience. Because Twitter and Instagram, at least for me, serve 2 very different purposes. Now, I do put my stuff out on Twitter. I need to put more hashtags up to see if I can reach out to more people, but I do put my stuff out on Twitter, or on Instagram rather, and I have since, well, I've been doing it on and off, honestly, because they flirted around with the 1 hour time limit, and when battery was starting to go bad on my old phone, I didn't use that, but I've been on there for a while. I will be completely frank and honest with you. Mom and Dad, if you're listening, cover your ears. I go on Instagram for the e-thoughts. I do mutual follow a few people that I know in real life, or I've met in real life, or some of the people who follow the show over there, like Sully, that we talked, came into the chat yesterday. I've hung out with him, I've partied with him, but I know him essentially because of doing contemporary. With that being said, my the main consumption that I have on Instagram is the whores. The girls who think that posing in skimpy outfits and having their hands open for OnlyFans, which I don't follow OnlyFans. I don't do any of that because I think it's a waste of money. Especially when you can Google images of some of these same girls for free. Because if an image has been online, it gets leaked. I'm not against them going out and trying to make money for it. I just won't pay for it myself. But that's what I'm there for. That's what I consume on Instagram. There are a few political accounts that I follow, and like the White House and Fox News and stuff like that for news tips, but for the most part, it's girls. My Instagram feed looks like a Motley Crue song from the 80s. Girls, girls, that was Motley Crue, right? Whereas over on Twitter, I have almost none of that. I've looked at Twitter accounts of some of the girls that are over on my Instagram, but I don't follow them. I just kind of look at that because, hey, what are you doing differently over there? There's a very, very, very narrow crossover between my Instagram and my Twitter. But then when I went onto Threads, number one, I was one of the first people onto it, but number two, one of the first things that they had was do you want to import your followers list from Instagram? And I said yes. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, if some of these e-thoughts want to become Threads famous, they're actually going to have to develop a personality, because the onset and the outset that favors them on Instagram, onset and outset, does not work on Threads. So they're going to have to develop a personality in a hurry. But again, there's almost no overlap between the two. None. With the exception of a very narrow handful of people that I follow on both platforms, mostly for the memes. Or happening to know them in real life. I don't think that this takes off the way that people think that it's going to take off. I think this is going to wind up being a flop because, again, the primary users of Instagram, where you sign up, and that's the other avenue of what happened with this, is why this is so easily downloaded, because everybody who has an Instagram got an alert last night between the hours of 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. that said, hey, you're using Instagram. Do you want to use Threads? Just hit this button and we'll do everything else for you. And that's literally all it was. Hit this button to sign up. Oh, look, we have the app on your phone. Hit this button to import your contacts list or your following list from Instagram. Oh, look, now you have content. And that's it. That's all that they did. Got one from our friends over at NPR, asking the question, is Threads really a Twitter killer? Here's what we know so far, from Emily Olson. Another day, a new app promising to replace Twitter. The hierarchy of text-based social media platforms started looking shaky as soon as Elon took over Twitter last year, and it's only grown more unstable as he continues rolling out abrupt and unpopular changes on the platform. That has sparked a host of challengers vying for Twitter's beloved throne, the latest of which is Threads, which was unveiled late Wednesday by Meta, the parent company behind Facebook. Threads already appears to have a leg up on Twitter's competitors, gaining 30 million users in less than 24 hours, but it could it go all the way? Banging the final nail in Twitter's coffin, it may not be so simple. Meta's transitioning Threads as a new place for people to have real-time public conversation, and though it's tied closely to Instagram, users need an Instagram account to sign up. The user's interface looks and feels a lot like Twitter. There are buttons to like, repost, reply, or quote a thread. The number of likes and replies on each post is displayed below its content. Accounts can be public or private. In terms of function, the app opts for simplicity over flashy new features. But it may be because of that fact, rather than the spite of it, that folks are flocking to Threads in droves.